First of all, I want to say we are so excited about you guys being able to come back to Australia and, of course, having new music as well. So, congratulations on all of that. And how do you feel about being able to head back to Australia?
Well, thanks for that. We love coming to Australia. It's a more unique experience this time because Guy is living in Melbourne now, so that adds a little different kind of feel to it. But yeah, I mean, I don't even know how many times we've been to Australia at this point, but it's definitely one of my favorite places to go in the world.
So, tell us a little bit about what that's like having one member live in Australia now. Like, what has that meant for the band over the years, and what does it mean for you guys when you're touring this time?
Well, it's kind of a new experience for us at this point. Guy and his family moved to Melbourne in, I want to say, June, and we did a European tour after that. But what that meant is that we went to the Netherlands and rehearsed for 5 days before the tour started. And we're kind of doing that same thing on this trip where the three of us are going down to Melbourne and staying for, the better part of a week and rehearsing with Guy and getting ready for the tour. So that's a little different, but what I realized on the European tour is that we were in better shape than ever for going on tour. Like we were more rehearsed than usual because we spent 5 days actually rehearsing. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what his whole life is like now down there. It'll be kind of fun to see his new place and all that kind of stuff. And we also means we get to spend more time in Melbourne, which is one of my favorite cities.
Yeah, I'm based in Melbourne as well, and I was going to say it also means that you have a local that can show you around to some of the places that only locals know about as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we've spent a good amount of time in Melbourne, through the years, but yeah, it'll be great to. He's got friends down there and stuff, and I think we'll have a fun week of rehearsals before the tour gets going.
Yep. What is it about Melbourne that you love? I'm curious now, being a Melburnian myself.
Well, I think historically it's been considered a sister city to Seattle, for one.
Yep.
The climate is a little bit. I think there's more seasons in Melbourne, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
It's not quite as like Sydney is just really hot, and like Brisbane is really hot. Melbourne seems to, have some different seasons at least. It reminds me a lot of Seattle in a way. I think there's a great rock and roll scene there, and always has been.
Yep.
Through the years. So I think there's just a lot of similarities, and we have friends there. We've been pals with Cosmic Psychos and all sorts of people from that area for forever. So I don't know. It feels very familiar when I'm there.
Yeah. You talk about our seasons. Well, we have a saying here: if you don't like the weather, come back in an hour, because
right.
Melbourne is famous for having a 35, 36 degree day and then it being 16 degrees and raining by 9 o'clock that night. So, yeah, that's one thing you got to get used to here.
Yeah, but for me, that would be the easiest place for me to get used to in Australia.
Yeah. Steve, were you aware when you first started coming to Australia, the love affair that Australians have with Mudhoney? I mean, I'm showing my age here, but I remember being in high school and your cassettes being passed around between students. Were you aware of that love affair that you had, that your Aussie fans had with you, and also that you guys' music changed the generation?
I think, we were obviously influenced by a lot of Australian music, for one. Going back to, the 70s bands, the Saints, the Radio Birdman, that kind of stuff. Birthday Party, of course. And a lot of that mid-'80s, kind of Eastern Dark and all those sort of garagey New Christ, sort of garage Scientists. Can't leave out the Scientists, of course. So I think there was a kindred spirit there,
Yeah.
and I think, we were lucky that we met some good people down there to help bring us down there. Bruce from A Go-Go Records and stuff. And I think it was just a good fit. I think all around. I mean, the Board. There's all sorts of great bands that were happening when we were first going down there. That I think we just felt a real kinship.
Yeah. How did you discover so many Australian bands during that time? Because we kind of live in a shadow here in Australia where everyone always tells you, oh, Australian culture depends on American culture. But you don't know until we start talking to people like you. And of course, Quentin Tarantino has said that he was famously got his film knowledge from watching what we call Ozploitation films from the 70s and 80s. So we've had a fair influence on people. How did you discover Australian music during that time?
Well, I feel like we all discovered the Saints because their record was, shall we say, unsuccessful in America. So there's lots of really cheap, cut-out bargain bin copies of their second album.
Yep.
And it was everywhere for like $2. And, I remember buying that and listening to it going like, this is so great. And, then obviously the Birthday Party was a big one. That I think it was one of their last EPs, the Deep in the Woods stuff. But that was the stuff that really captivated me. And that was still fairly early in the 80s, like 83, 84. And then there was just so many singles coming. I'm a total punk singles guy. And there were just so many singles coming out of Australia. And a couple of the record stores in Seattle bought them all, and nobody bought them, and they ended up going on sale for $1 or $2, and I bought them all. Including like New Zealand stuff too, all the Flying Nun early stuff.
Yep.
But I think the big one, I'm going to say, it was the Scientists. Their Blood Red River EP. It was only $4.99 or something at Tower Records, and I kept staring at it, going like, "This looks just like the Stooges' first record, basically."
Yeah.
I figured it's got to be good.
Yeah.
That's what me and Mark were just kind of obsessed with, getting to like some of that heavy late '60s stuff. Obviously the Stooges, but I was obsessed with Blue Cheer and Neil Young and stuff, and they just look so cool, and that matters. And we bought it, and we were just like, "Whoa!" It was just so good. It didn't sound like what I thought it would sound like.
Yeah.
It wasn't what I expected, but it was just still so great. And then, we just kept buying all the weird Australian stuff. It was kind of a thing.
So what was that like the first time you got to tour to Australia? Were you kind of seeking out more Australian music? Were you trying to connect with the bands that you'd been listening to? What was that first tour like?
Yeah, I mean, I can't leave out Lubricated Goat. That was a big one, obviously, since Guy was involved in that. When we first went down there, we ended up meeting all the Lubricated Goat people, Tex Perkins. They all lived sort of in a house called Graceland or something like that.
Yeah.
Old trash house in Sydney. And so we met all of those guys, pretty early on. Well, I should say the Lubricated Goat had already come to Seattle. They came to Seattle in '89, so that's where we met all of them. But when we got to Sydney, we hooked up with all of them and met more of the surrounding people that weren't necessarily always in Lubricated Goat, but were part of that whole Black Eye, Red Eye Records scene,
Yep.
So we met them. I can't remember when we actually met Kim Salmon. I'd have to rack my brain a little bit more on that. I'm not sure if we met him. We came to Australia twice in 1990. Once at the beginning of the year and once at the end.
Yep.
And they kind of blur together a little bit for me.
Yeah.
But we would, we were meeting a lot of people because we knew, Bruce from A Go-Go and Steve Pav was the guy that was bringing us down there at the time, and I'm spacing on the Waterfront Records guy's name right now. I'm ashamed for that. Don't put that in the interview.
No.
but we met the right people, kind of, and I feel like through that, like that's how we became buddies with B Suburban, because they were part of that lubricated goat world, I guess. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was exciting for me. I mean, I think the coolest tour we did down there was one of the first Big Day Out tours.
Yep.
In maybe '93.
Yep.
I think it was '93. And that was a pretty amazing trip down there. We had the B Suburban on there, the Hard-Ons, who I always loved the Hard-Ons as well. And they had Jerry A from Poison Idea singing for part of their set, which was awesome.
Big Day Out was a game changer for a lot of us young music fans. I was at high school at that time, and they were the first festival that was kind of held here in Australia where they weren't an all ages gig, but they didn't seem to care if you were underage and bought a ticket. So it was a big game changer for a lot of us youngsters.
Yeah, that was a wild trip. There was, Iggy Pop was on there, Nick Cave, the Sonic Youth. It was I would say that's like the greatest lineup of a tour I've ever been part of.
Yep.
Plus there was like crazy, like there was a, traveling half pipe for skaters and stuff, and there's all these like just absolutely bonkers skateboarders from America there and elsewhere, I suppose. But yeah, it was a pretty wild trip.
So, Steve, what have you got in store for your fans this time around with the tour? You guys have got so many amazing tracks in the back catalogue now. You've got new music coming out as well. What have you got in store for us?
Well, we're going to play some of the songs from the new record, of course. We're not going to play the whole thing or anything every night. We have to learn some of the songs still, because we recorded the record we had a different approach by necessity on this record, where we didn't practice or see each other for a year and a half because of COVID. And then, once we could get together, we kind of made a schedule and said, okay, we're going to try to get a record recorded and, do this and that and get the record out at this time, which we've never really scheduled things before. We're kind of an amateurish lot, I suppose. But, this time we weren't totally prepared when we went in the studio. Songs weren't finished. We had ideas, but we just kind of built the songs in the studio, which we've never done before. But what that means is we don't know how to play them.
Yeah.
So that's why we're coming down to Melbourne to rehearse.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, there's certain songs we kind of feel that we have to play every night, you know. And the list grows because we keep going. But, we play about an hour and a half or something and try to get as many old songs in and then enough new ones to keep, us interested as well as, hopefully, people are stoked to hear new stuff as well.
So the new album, we've had a little bit of a teaser for it now with Almost Everything. Tell us a little bit about this album. What kind of things were inspiring you guys when you were working on the album, and did you guys have any goals that you wanted to achieve with this album as well when you sat down to work it out?
We never have any real goals. We want to like the songs that we come up with. And lately it seems like we have more songs than we need for an album. So we'll have another EP coming out in the next year, probably.
Yep.
Of leftover stuff. But I think one of the most interesting things on this one is that our drummer Dan has been writing a lot of songs on guitar. And, he plays a guitar obsessively all the time and has for like years. But he's actually showing us song ideas now. And he brings them in mostly, he has an idea and a concept, and he has a couple guitar tracks and maybe a bass track on these demos he's making at home. And that's a real interesting, different dynamic. They're not what you would expect. Some of them are a little bit lighter, if you will.
Yep.
And it was kind of fun for me to try to figure out how to play the music Dan writes, because he's a drummer, so he's better rhythmically than I am.
Yeah.
And probably more complex. And so that was kind of fun. one of my favorite songs on the record is "I Like Little Dogs," and that's all Dan's music.
Yep.
And it's a great kind of a departure, but you know, it's a great song, I think. And so I think that was interesting, having Dan bringing in music. And the rest, I think, we did it quickly. And I think sometimes we get bogged down in trying to work out all the details. And I don't always think with rock and roll that, like, more time spent on a song means better song.
Yep. Definitely.
I think it's like first thought, best thought.
You said that this was quite a quick album. Was that the songwriting process or the recording process or everything all together?
Well, like I said, we didn't get together for a year and a half.
Yep.
And usually what we do, we just sit around in Mark's basement and bash out riffs, for hours at a time. And we didn't really have that luxury. And so, like I said, some of the stuff was real half-baked when we went in the studio. And then between the four of us and our producer, engineer, Johnny Sangster, we kind of, organized these things into songs. And that's a different approach for us,
Yeah.
They're usually, set and sealed before we get in the studio. So I think that makes it a little bit, to me, it sounds fresher, kind of just because it was kind of by the seat of our pants, some of it,
Yeah.
So I hopefully there's some good, lively energy to it, as we get older.
Definitely. Well, mate, we are almost right out of time, so I guess to finish off, do you have a final message for all of your Australian fans out there before they go out to grab tickets to the show and to grab the album as well?
No, just that we're really excited to be coming down there and, go hang out at Guy's pool.